My mama is from West Virginia. Just have to start with that. In that way, she's very real, very practical, very extravagant, and how do I put this? Very direct. We sometimes call her Steamrollin' Sue, because she can get things done, or at least at one point in her life she could. And it just so happens that at one point in my childhood, she was trying to get me to do something I didn't want to do, and I looked at her right in the eye, and forgive me for the language, I looked at her and I said, "Well, you're stupid." You didn't quite get that right, but it's a little bit of a bigger moment than that. I could tell because outside the house, the birds stopped chirping. And the children in the neighborhood, even without knowing why, put down their balls and their bats and their bikes and walked inside their homes. And as I sat there on the floor looking up at my mother, I noticed that she had started to grow. Now when I say she started to grow, I really mean it. She started to get so big. She started pushing up the ceiling. We live in a 2-story house. She started pushing up the ceiling of the room that we were in. And when the roof started to buckle, that was the moment I thought, I have got to get out of here. And I got up, and I turned, and I ran outside the house, and I ran past 3 of our neighbors' houses towards the end of the street. And the man next door to us, his name was Mr. Walker. He was a Texas cowboy, transplanted to Indiana, and he was tough as nails, but as soon as he saw me go by, he hit the button on his garage door so that the door was open. And I ran all the way to the end of the little street, and I looked behind me, and there was my mama's hand. Now, she was still standing in the living room, but her arm and her hand were right behind me. And that was the moment that I figured out, I need help. The psalmist wrote, I looked upon the hills from whence cometh my help. My help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. I needed someone more local. So I decided there was only one person that could help me in my little town of Frankton, Indiana. I needed to go to my grandmother's house. She lives in South Charleston, West Virginia. So I continued to run as fast as I could possibly run. And I got pretty far, too. I got to the border of Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. And it's here that I made my fatal mistake. I looked behind me to see if her hand was still there. It was. She was still in the living room. But her hand was right there, and it managed to snatch a hold of me, and I fell down to the ground. And of course, that's when she started to drag me back to the living room. But I was not to be dissuaded. I took my fingers and I dug them down into the earth. And as I dug a trench into the earth that eventually became the Ohio River. That's why you have the Ohio River. My mama and I dug it for you. You're welcome. And she dragged me all the way back into that living room. Pipes sprang everywhere, the roof sort of askew. And strangely enough, what happened next surprised me more than anything I'd ever seen in my entire life. She wasn't angry. She was painfully and woefully wounded. I could see it in her eyes. She was hurt. All the joking aside, I really hurt her that day. And I don't exactly know why, but I have a couple guesses. St. Augustine said that when we Christian people, when we human beings, when we speak, we actually create worlds. And he does this on the basis of Genesis chapter 1. What does God do? He speaks into the darkness and he creates light. Let there be light, and then there's light. And he says, let there be a firmament, and there's a firmament. And let there be animals and creatures, and then there are animals and creatures. God speaks, and then it's created, right? And he said, now human beings are created in the image of God. And when we speak, we have some little foretaste, some little glimmer of that creative power in us. And when we speak, we create. And so if you think about that for just a moment, perhaps you're thinking, well, that sounds a little esoteric. It's really not. It's very well grounded. Just imagine if you have a child and you tell them they're stupid every single day. Just imagine if you tell them they're worthless. Doesn't their world immediately become darker? Don't they immediately live out exactly what you told them they were going to do? If you have a child and you tell them you're going to be a criminal one day, guess what happens? You transform and you change and you create their world for them. You know, a funny thing is we repainted everything this week, but if we dig back just a little bit further, if we take off this layer of paint, we'll find the darker goldenrod color. And I bet you if we go further back from that, we'll find some other color, maybe the century was at some point. And I bet you if we keep going back far enough, we'll come back to the drywall. And even there will be some place where the builder wrote a number or something and said, this is where I'm going to cut, and 24 inches or whatever he wrote, right? And I bet you it's still back there somewhere. And when I called my mama that name that one day, it wasn't just me speaking, was it? It could have been her. It could have been some girl at school. It could have been her father. It could have been anybody. But when she heard me say that, all of a sudden, my words made it right through the shields of her armor, all the way down to the heart. And isn't it amazing that sometimes in our lives, people say mean things to us, and we're like, I don't care what you say about me. And then there are times they say just the right thing. Oh, it's so, I would almost say it's satanic in its dimension. It just goes right through every defense and every belief we have, and it hits us for some reason, right? And don't these evil words, don't they come back to us at all the wrong moments? Don't they just come and fight and steal our energy away? St. James reminds us, the tongue is a fire, and it'll burn down the whole forest. Our tongue is like the rudder of a ship. It's a huge ship, right? You ever seen one of them big cruise ships, right? The rudder is really small in relation to the rest of the ship, isn't it? But it drives the whole thing, right? And our tongues drive our world around us, don't they? That's why he says people who can control their tongue, those are the people who really have reached maturity. They put a bridle on it, and now they can lead it wherever they want to go. If you think about it, it's kind of powerful to say, you can control your tongue. I mean, aren't there those moments when you hit your finger with a hammer or you stub your toe, right? And when that happens, most of us don't go, praise the Lord, right? Most of us don't go, we say something, don't we? Y'all know what I'm talking about, don't pretend. We say something, right? Something that isn't good, and we know it, right? And we excuse it, and we should. There's no reason to live in such horrible torment for that kind of thing, but there is this reality of when you meet someone who hits their elbow and they go, golly darn, you know that's a person who has control of their mouth, right? It can run away with us. And when St. James tells us that it runs your entire world, everything that you do, all the creative possibilities, we have to remember that. Because let's face it, people's mouths can make your workday pretty awful, can't it? You're in your office and all of a sudden conflict breaks out and people say mean things to each other, and then all of a sudden the whole day is ruined, right? You go home, you try not to, but you take it with you. Yell at your kids, and pretty soon, all the world is darkness and despair. When we speak, just like God, we tend to create the world around us. Isn't it an astounding thing that deep beneath the surface of who we are, there's about 1,001 different statements that people have made? I'll tell you a moment in my life where this really came head to head for me. I was about my third year of seminary, and it was Easter time, and for some terrible reason, I just could not be happy about it. I knew it was sort of a signal to me. It's Easter, and I am so depressed. I can't seem to muster the happiness for Easter services. And I thought, this really shows me that something is wrong. And so I went to see a licensed mental health professional. I went to see a counselor, and she gave me this image. And it's kind of stuck with me to this very day. I hope it is as meaningful for you as it has been for me. She said, just imagine in your brain that your brain is a Smurf village. And there are all those lovely little Smurfs running around. Now, if you think about the Smurfs for just a minute, the little cartoon characters. Hefty Smurf, what does he do? Lifts weights, right? Smurfette, what does she do? Only girly things, right? Harmony Smurf, what does he do? Plays music, right? Jokey Smurf, what does he do? He tells jokes. They all do one thing. Papa Smurf is the only one who's got more than one dimension to him, right? Sometimes he's happy, sometimes he's sad, he's intelligent, he's wise. So she said, just imagine your brain is a Smurf village. And all the Smurfs are something you believe about yourself or something someone said to you. So one Smurf walks around going, I'm smart, I'm smart, I'm smart. And maybe there are 3 Smurfs running around going, you're so stupid, you're dumb, something your teacher said to you, something you believe about yourself. They're all running around, right? And they're all saying whatever they need to say. They're all saying things that people said to you. They just repeat it over and over again. And the time comes for you to make a decision. So Papa Smurf calls all the Smurfs together. Your brain, your conscious brain, calls everything together and says, I would really like to go for that promotion at work. And what happens is that all the Smurfs say whatever they say. And you know what? If you have enough of those negative Smurfs, there never was a decision. They're holding you, they're keeping you captive. You can't ever go for the promotion because, gosh darn it, you truly believe, because so many of those Smurfs are running around, you truly believe that you're unintelligent or not good enough. Every mean thing that people said to you that you took to heart are just those little Smurfs running around in your brain. And when the time comes to make some kind of decision about your life, you can't. You can't make any other decision than the negative because those little guys have got Papa Smurf tied down. She said, Michael, here's what I want you to do. Over the next few weeks, we're going to kill the Smurfs. All those negative Smurfs that make it impossible for you to make any other decision than no, we're going to get rid of them. So that when the time comes, you can rationally value them. Do I want to do this or don't I want to do this? What are the pros? What are the cons? But it won't be, I'm not good enough. Underneath the surface of the wall, there's writing. Underneath the surface of this paint, there's writing somewhere. Some builder put it there, right? And maybe the builders of your life have said joyful and hopeful things to you. I pray that that is true. But maybe there's some places where some people have written upon you evil. Or maybe there are places where you have written evil on someone else. Ooh, I went there, didn't I? Maybe you said mean things. Maybe you harmed someone else with your words. And they're going to have to do the work of pulling that out of themselves at some point so that they can make healthy decisions. Maybe in those conditions, if something's niggling you in the back of the brain right now and you're thinking, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe it's time to pick up the phone and make an apology. Make that Smurf lose its power. She said that, but she said it was wrong of her. Right? Because we have to remember that what God wants for all of us is to live in freedom. I told you that somewhere down at the surface of this wall, there's probably some note from the builder, right? Well, you were built by God. And what does God say about you? I created you in my own image. I make you are of sacred and powerful worth. You are a person that I consider worth dying for. If we pull away the layers of all the mean things people have said, there is the inherent dignity of being a creation of God. And that is who you truly are. This counselor, her name is Bonnie Crandall, she said that she calls it being a cog pal, a child of God and a person of worth. Beneath the surface of everything that we see, at the very heart of you, you're a child of God and a person of worth. Don't ever let anyone speak against that truth. And don't ever let that truth be spoken against by you to someone else, right? Keep control of your tongue. Pray to God. God, let me keep control of my tongue. God, help me to keep my mouth to myself. God, help me only to speak praise and not curses. God, help me. Help me to keep control of my tongue. It is a fire in me. God, there are moments I need you to quench it. Let my mouth be used for praise. let my mouth not be used to cause pain for others. Ooh, that's a tough one. Now, the sermon ends here, but I have to tell the story because, and it helps the sermon, not at all. But Bonnie Crandall and I really connected, and she was just this wonderful lady. She was in the theater. She tells this hilarious story, and I just have to share it with you. It kind of fits, I guess. One day, she and her husband, who was a professor at the seminary, who I had, they were at this event together, and he said he just knew that she was mad at him for something, right? And she kept looking at him, giving him dirty looks. He's like, I don't know what I did, but it's not good. And finally, she grabbed a piece of paper and she wrote something and she handed it to him. And she said, and he looked at it and he realized, and it read this: "Don't I look pretty today in my new outfit?" And he said, "You look beautiful today." And he keeps that card in his wallet. I guess it kind of does fit the sermon. This will work out better in the second service thing. Because it's so important also to be encouraging and to be a blessing. To use your mouth for that too, right? She knew she looked good. She needed to hear it, right? And that's true of every person in this room. You may say to yourself, because of our culture and the prejudice we have, that that's just something that a woman would want. Oh no. No, your husband wants to hear he looks good too, sometimes too, okay? That's not a gender specific thing. That's just a thing for human beings. We like to be affirmed sometimes. Don't take advantage of each other. So that's just a little sermon. That's like a little sermon, sort of a dessert. There you go. Well, our next act of worship